I would give everything I have, all this land, every penny, just to see my son open his eyes and truly live.
There are moments in life when we do something without expecting anything in return. A simple gesture moved only by the heart. But what if I told you that this gesture could change everything? That the person you helped without thinking twice could become the answer to your greatest pain? This is the story of a farmer who stopped to help a stranger on a stormy day and had no idea that this woman would bring back what he loved most in the world. Get ready, because what you're about to hear will make you believe that nothing in life happens by chance. So subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment on where you're watching from. And let's get to the story. The rain was falling heavily that October afternoon in rural Texas, the kind of rain that turns dirt roads into rivers of mud and makes any sensible person seek shelter. Robert Mitchell drove his black Ford pickup truck down the road that had crossed his land for over 40 years. At 52, with his gray hair hidden under a weathered cowboy hat, Robert knew every curve, every pothole on that road. But that day, something different caught his attention. A car was stopped on the shoulder of the road, its hood up and smoking. And there, next to the vehicle, a woman in her early 30s, soaked to the bone, was trying to shield her face from the rain with a leather briefcase that was already completely wet. She was wearing formal clothes, completely inappropriate for that downpour. Robert slowed down and stopped beside her. "Do you need help, miss?" He shouted out the window, trying to make himself heard over the noise of the rain. The woman turned around, startled at first, but her eyes soon showed a mixture of relief and despair. "My car. It just died. I have no cell phone signal here and..." She looked around at the empty expanse of land. "I haven't seen anyone pass by for over an hour." "Get in the truck. You'll catch pneumonia out there," Robert said, unlocking the passenger door. She hesitated for a second. She was a stranger accepting a ride from a stranger in the middle of nowhere. But the rain wouldn't let up, and the cold was starting to seep into her bones. She got in. "Thank you," she said, trembling. "I'm Sarah Collins, Robert Mitchell. Nice to meet you." He took off his leather jacket and offered it to her. "You can wear it. The farm isn't far from here. We'll let you dry off, call a tow truck, and get you a hot meal. The storm isn't going away anytime soon." Sarah accepted the jacket with a shy, grateful smile. During the 15-minute drive to the farm, they didn't talk much. Sarah gazed out the window, observing the endless fences, the cattle in the distance seeking shelter, the seemingly endless lands. Robert, for his part, kept his eyes on the slippery road but occasionally glanced sideways at that mysterious woman fate had placed in his path. When they arrived at the property, Sarah was impressed. The main house was an imposing two-story building with a wide veranda and white columns. Everything was very well maintained, even with the heavy rain pouring down. Robert parked near the side entrance and the two of them rushed inside. "Maria!" Robert called as soon as they entered. A woman of about 60, wearing a flowered apron and a warm smile, appeared from the kitchen. "Maria, this is Sarah. Her car broke down on the road. Could you make her some hot tea and get some dry clothes?" "Of course, Mr. Robert. Come, dear," Maria said, leading Sarah with motherly gentleness. "You're trembling all over. Let's make you comfortable." Half an hour later, Sarah was sitting in the spacious living room, wearing sweatpants and a wool sweater that had belonged to Maria. The hot tea steamed in her hands, and she had finally stopped trembling. Robert was sitting in the armchair opposite her, a cup of coffee in his hands, watching her with a kind expression. "I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble," Sarah said, still a little shy and embarrassed by the situation. "I didn't mean to take advantage of your hospitality like that." "Don't be silly," Robert replied with a wave of his hand. "Here in Texas, we don't leave anyone stranded on the road, especially not in this storm." "Where were you going?" "I was heading to some friend's country house about 50 miles from here. A weekend to relax, you know. I work in Dallas and, well, things have been kind of intense lately." "I understand. And what do you do in Dallas?" Robert asked, more out of politeness than curiosity. Sarah hesitated. "I'm a doctor, a neurosurgeon actually." Robert's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. He simply nodded as if processing the information. A comfortable silence hung between them for a few moments, broken only by the sound of rain hitting the windows. "Do you have family here?" Sarah asked, looking around. The house was beautiful, but it had a certain emptiness, a quietness that went beyond the normal silence of a rainy afternoon. Robert took a sip of his coffee, and Sarah noticed his eyes drifting further away, filled with an old sadness. "I have a son, Thomas. He's 10 years old." "Oh, how lovely." Is he at school now? Robert shook his head slowly. No, Thomas. He doesn't go to school. In fact, he doesn't leave his room. Sarah frowned, confused. Robert took a deep breath, as if preparing to tell her something he rarely shared with strangers. But there was something about Sarah, perhaps the kindness in her eyes or the way she listened, that made him want to speak. Thomas was born with a brain malformation. My wife Caroline, she died in childbirth. Complications that no one foresaw. His voice broke for a second. It's been 10 years. Thomas is all I have left of her. Robert, I'm so sorry, Sarah said, her voice genuinely moved. His brain problem is complex. He lies down most of the time, has occasional seizures, and can't walk or talk properly. I hire the best doctors, full-time nurses, physiotherapists, everything money can buy. And thank God I have money. This farm, it's been in my family for generations. If it weren't for that, Thomas wouldn't be alive today. Sarah listened in silence, her heart tightening with each word. But do you know what the doctors tell me? Robert continued, his voice growing more tense. That no matter how much money I have, if he doesn't have a specific brain surgery soon, there's no amount of money in the world that will keep him alive. The problem is progressing. They give me at most another year, maybe 2. And the surgery? Why doesn't he have it? Sarah asked, leaning slightly forward. It's an extremely delicate surgery. The doctors here don't feel confident performing it. They say that only a few neurosurgeons in the country have the necessary experience for this type of procedure, and the waiting list is absurd. I tried everything. I offered to pay whatever was needed, but it seems there are certain things that money can't buy. At least not fast enough. He looked at Sarah, and she could see tears welling up in the corners of his eyes. I would give everything I have. All this land, every penny in my account, just to see my son truly open his eyes and live like a normal child should live. But He paused, took a deep breath, and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I have faith. Caroline was very religious, and she taught me to have faith. I believe God has a plan, that somehow my son will be healed. Sarah remained silent for a long moment. Her heart pounded in her chest. She placed her teacup on the coffee table and looked directly at Robert. Robert, she said, her voice firm but gentle. What kind of malformation does Thomas have? He seemed surprised by the question. It's something called a congenital cerebral aneurysm with arteriovenous malformation. At least that's what the doctors explained to me. It's rare and complicated. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. She knew that diagnosis. Very well, in fact. It was one of her specialties. Robert, I need to tell you something, she said, her voice beginning to tremble slightly with emotion. You asked what I do in Dallas. I'm a neurosurgeon, but not just any neurosurgeon. I've specialized for the last 12 years in exactly this type of case. Congenital aneurysms and arteriovenous malformations in children. I did my residency at the Mayo Clinic and worked with some of the best specialists in the country. In the last 5 years, I've performed over 40 surgeries of this type. And the success rate? Robert, it's high. Robert stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I can help your son, Sarah said, and a tear rolled down her face. I can perform Thomas's surgery. Robert Mitchell couldn't move. He was frozen in that armchair, his eyes fixed on Sarah, trying to understand if this was real or if he was having some kind of impossible dream. His chest rose and fell rapidly as if he had just run a marathon. You can? Was all he managed to say, his voice coming out almost as a whisper. Sarah nodded, wiping away her own tears. I can. I need to see his test results, understand the extent of the malformation. But from what you've described, yes, Robert, I can perform this surgery. For a moment, silence returned to the room. Then Robert simply broke down. He buried his face in his hands and began to cry. These weren't discreet tears. It was a deep, visceral cry. The cry of a father who for 10 years had carried the weight of watching his son slowly wither away. Of a man who had done everything, and it still hadn't been enough. It was the cry of someone who finally saw a light at the end of the darkest tunnel of his life. Sarah stood up and knelt beside him, placing her hand on his shoulder. Everything will be all right, she said softly. I promise I'll do everything I can. When Robert finally managed to compose himself, he looked at her with a gratitude that all the words in the world couldn't express. How is this possible? Of all the people who could have broken down on that road today, it had to be you? Sarah smiled through her tears. I don't know, Robert, but maybe your wife was right. Maybe some things really are the work of God. That same afternoon, as soon as the rain let up, Sarah called her friends explaining that she wouldn't be able to make it to the weekend. She didn't go into details, only saying that a medical emergency had come up. Robert, for his part, gathered all of Thomas's medical records from the last few years. Hundreds of pages of medical reports, MRIs, and CT scans. Sarah spent hours that night studying each document, each image with absolute concentration. Robert could barely sleep. He sat on the porch even in the cold of the night looking at the starry sky that had appeared after the storm. And for the first time in a long time, he prayed, not only asking, but giving thanks. The next morning, Sarah asked to meet Thomas. Robert took her to his room on the second floor. It was a spacious room, filled with natural light streaming through the large windows. Medical equipment was everywhere, a vital signs monitor blinking softly, and a nurse sat in a chair in the corner reading a book. And there, in the adapted hospital bed, lay Thomas, a small boy for his 10 years with light brown hair falling over his forehead, pale skin and closed eyes. He seemed to be sleeping, but his breathing was irregular, and from time to time his body would give small, involuntary spasms. Sarah approached slowly, with the respect of someone who understands the sacredness of that moment. She looked at Robert and saw that his eyes were fixed on his son, with that look that only a father can have, a mixture of infinite love and profound pain. "May I examine it?" she asked softly. Robert simply nodded, not trusting his voice at that moment. Sarah spent the next 20 minutes performing a complete neurological exam, testing reflexes, observing the boy's reactions. Thomas opened his eyes a few times, green eyes like his father's, but his gaze was distant, unfocused. He made some sounds, but nothing that resembled words. When she finished, Sarah left the room with Robert and they went to the office downstairs. She spread the scan images out on the large wooden table and began pointing to specific areas. "His case is really complex, but not impossible," she began, her voice now professional but still gentle. "The malformation is here," she pointed to an area on the MRI, pressing on this part of the brain that controls motor and speech functions. "The aneurysm is here, and that's what represents the greatest immediate risk. If it ruptures, he dies," Robert finished, his voice hoarse. "Yes, but the good news is that the location, although delicate, is accessible. I've performed similar surgeries before. The success rate for cases like Thomas's, when operated on by specialized teams, is approximately 75%. 75%, Robert repeated, letting the number sink in. To some it might not seem like much, but for a father who had heard for years that there was no hope, it was a miracle. "When can we do the surgery?" he asked anxiously. Sarah took a deep breath. "I need to assemble a team. This type of surgery requires not only me, but anesthesiologists specializing in pediatric cases, neurologists, a support team, and it needs to be done in a hospital with a state-of-the-art neonatal ICU. I operate at Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas. We have one of the best neurology centers in the country. How long? I need to organize everything, get Thomas hired, coordinate schedules. I'd say about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months at most." Robert nodded. 2 months. He had waited 10 years. 2 months was nothing. "And Sarah," he said, taking her hand, "how much do you charge for a surgery like that?" She looked into his eyes and smiled. "Robert, you saved me yesterday. You pulled me out of the rain, gave me shelter, treated me kindly when I was a complete stranger. I won't ask for anything in return." "Sarah, no. That's not fair to you. This is your job, your expertise. At least let me—" "Robert," she interrupted him firmly. "Some encounters aren't coincidences. You believe that, don't you? So accept this as a gift. A gift from God or the universe or the memory of your wife watching over you. But I'm going to have this surgery and I'm going to do it for free." Robert couldn't argue. He simply embraced her. And in that embrace, 10 years of anguish were released, hope was renewed. In the following weeks, Sarah and Robert kept in constant contact. She called every 2 or 3 days to check on Thomas, to request additional tests, and to keep him updated on the preparations. Robert sent the results immediately, hiring private ambulances to take his son to the best laboratories when necessary. But beyond the medical conversations, they began to talk about other things. Sarah talked about her life in Dallas, about how she had chosen medicine after her younger brother died of cancer when she was 15. Robert spoke about the farm, about how he had learned to manage everything on his own after his father died, about the memories he had with Carolyn. It was strange but natural at the same time. Two complete strangers who had connected in a way they couldn't fully explain. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was something deeper than that. It was a friendship forged in the fire of adversity and shared hope. Finally, 8 weeks after that rainy day, the moment arrived. Thomas was transported to Dallas in a mobile ICU ambulance that Robert had rented. Sarah had arranged everything, from the private hospital room to the elite surgical team she had personally selected. The night before the surgery, Robert sat beside Thomas's bed in the hospital. The boy was sedated, prepared for the procedure the following morning. Sarah entered the room, still wearing her scrubs, having just come from a final meeting with the team. "How are you?" she asked, sitting down in the chair next to Robert. "Terrified," he admitted, "but also hopeful. For the first time in a long time, I truly believe my son can have a normal life." Sarah placed her hand on his. "I'll do my best, Robert. I promise. I know. I trust you, more than I've trusted anyone in the last 10 years." They stood there in silence for a while, just watching Thomas breathe, the boy's chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Outside the window, Dallas gleamed with its nightlights, a vast city indifferent to the personal drama unfolding in that hospital room. "Sarah," Robert said, breaking the silence, "regardless of what happens tomorrow, thank you for everything, for caring, for giving my son this chance. It will work out," she said with conviction. "Have faith." The following morning at 6:30, Thomas was taken to the operating room. Robert signed all the terms, all the consent forms. Sarah was there, already dressed in her green surgical scrubs, the cap covering her hair. "See you on the other side," she said, giving Robert a firm squeeze of the hand before disappearing through the double doors of the operating room. And then began the longest wait of Robert Mitchell's life, 7 o'clock. The surgery was scheduled to last between 6 and 8 hours, Sarah had explained. But for Robert, sitting in that waiting room with its white walls and uncomfortable chairs, each minute felt like an eternity. He tried to read a magazine. He tried to watch the television in the corner. He even tried to pray, but the words escaped him before they could fully form in his mind. Maria had come with him, the faithful housekeeper who had become practically part of the family. She held his hand for the first 3 hours, quietly reciting her rosary, her lips moving in silent prayers. At 10 in the morning, she brought coffee. Robert drank it only because she insisted, but he didn't taste anything. At 11:30, the waiting room door opened. Robert jumped up, his heart pounding in his chest. But it was just a nurse bringing updates. "The surgery is progressing well. Dr. Collins asked me to let you know that we've passed the most critical part. She believes it should be finished in another 2 hours." Robert let out a sigh he didn't even know he was holding back. "Thank you. Thank you so much." When Sarah finally emerged from those doors at 2:15 p.m., still in her surgical scrubs, her cap crumpled, but with a smile on her face, Robert knew. Even before she spoke a word, he knew. "It worked," Sarah said, her own voice choked with emotion. "The surgery was a complete success, Robert. We managed to remove the aneurysm and correct the malformation. All of Thomas's vital signs are stable. He's in recovery now." Robert couldn't hold back. He simply collapsed into Sarah's arms and cried like he hadn't cried since the day Caroline died. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of a joy so intense it hurt. Maria was also crying, making the sign of the cross repeatedly, thanking God in Spanish. "When can I see him?" Robert asked as soon as he was able to speak. "In a few hours. He's still under the effects of the anesthesia. But Robert, you need to understand that recovery will be gradual. It's not like in the movies where the person wakes up and is cured. It will take time, physiotherapy, follow-up. But his brain can now develop properly. He has a real chance of having a normal life." "I understand. I know, but he will live. My son will truly live." Sarah smiled, exhausted but radiant. "Yes, he will live." The first few days were the hardest. Thomas spent 3 days in the post-operative ICU, with tubes and wires connected to him, monitors constantly flashing. Robert didn't leave the hospital. He slept in chairs, showered in the visitors' bathrooms, and ate sandwiches from the cafeteria. Sarah came to check on him every few hours, even when she wasn't on duty, adjusting medications and checking neurological signs. On the 4th day, Thomas opened his eyes. Really this time. Not that vacant, lost look from before. He looked around the room, confused, frightened, until his eyes met his father's. "Dad?" The word came out weak, almost imperceptible, but it was a word, a real conscious word. Robert couldn't answer. He just took his son's small hand and wept, kissing that fragile little hand repeatedly. Sarah was in the room at that moment, making her morning rounds. She discreetly stepped aside, allowing space for that private moment between father and son. But her own eyes were brimming with tears. Thomas's recovery was, as Sarah had warned, slow but steady. After 2 weeks in the hospital, he was transferred to a neurological rehabilitation center also in Dallas. Robert rented an apartment nearby so he could be close by every day. Sarah visited regularly, not just as a doctor but as a friend. She brought children's books for Thomas even though he couldn't yet read on his own. She brought chocolates which Robert had to limit because Thomas got too excited, and she would simply stay there, chatting with the two of them, laughing at the boys' small achievements. One day, 3 months after the surgery, Thomas took his first steps. It was only 4 steps supported by 2 physical therapists, but they were steps. Robert filmed everything on his cell phone, his hands trembling so much that the video came out shaky, but he didn't mind. Sarah was there too, and when Thomas finally sat back in his wheelchair, tired but smiling, she and Robert looked at each other, and in that look, there was something new. It was no longer just gratitude. It was no longer just friendship. It was something deeper, something that had grown silently over those months of shared struggle, of shared hopes and fears. It was Robert who first mustered the courage. One night after Thomas was already asleep in the rehabilitation room, he invited Sarah to dinner. A real dinner, not just coffee at the hospital cafeteria. "I know this might sound strange," he began, nervous like a teenager on a first date. "But Sarah, these last few months, you've become an essential part of my life, of our lives, mine and Thomas's. And I can't stop thinking that maybe this is more than gratitude. Maybe it's..." "Robert," she interrupted him gently, smiling, "I would love to have dinner with you." Their first meeting was at a discreet Italian restaurant far from the hospital. They talked for hours, not about medicine or about Thomas, but about themselves, about dreams, about childhood, about silly things that made them laugh. Sarah talked about her ridiculous obsession with horror movies, even though she was terrified herself. Robert talked about how he secretly wrote poetry, but had never shown it to anyone. "Poetry?" Sarah repeated, surprised and delighted. "Seriously?" "Don't laugh," he said, blushing. "Caroline said I was good, but I think she was just being kind. I want to read. Someday, when you feel comfortable, I want to read your poems." And he promised that one day he would show it. The following months were a time of pure transformation. Thomas continued to improve at a rate that impressed even the most experienced specialists. 6 months after surgery, he was already able to walk on his own, although still with some difficulty. He began to speak in complete sentences, his voice gaining strength and confidence. He started eating on his own, reading children's books and asking questions about everything. And while Thomas was flourishing, the relationship between Robert and Sarah also grew. They saw each other whenever possible. Sarah would go to the farm on weekends, and they would spend the afternoons on the porch, drinking lemonade, while Thomas played on the lawn with the dog Robert had bought for him, a golden retriever named Buddy. A year and a half after the surgery, on a beautiful spring evening in Texas, Robert took Sarah to the renovated barn where he kept his most precious mementos. There were old family photos, objects from his grandfather's time, and a wooden box where he kept something special. "I want to show you something," he said, opening the box and revealing a ring. It was the engagement ring he had given Caroline, a delicate piece with a small but perfect diamond. "Caroline wore this ring for 5 years. When she died, I kept it here. I promised myself I would only take it off again if I found someone I loved as much as I loved her." Sarah looked at the ring, then at Robert, her heart pounding. "Sarah Collins, you saved my son's life. But more than that, you saved mine too. You showed me that it's possible to love again, that it's possible to have hope. Will you marry me?" Sarah didn't need to think. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They married the following summer in a simple but beautiful ceremony on the farm. Thomas, now almost 12 years old and surprisingly almost completely recovered, was the page boy. He still had some limitations, a slight fine motor difficulty and occasional headaches, but he went to school, had friends, lived. Sarah moved to the farm but continued operating in Dallas a few days a week. She said she couldn't abandon her other patients, the other children who needed her. Robert fully supported her, proud of the incredible woman she was. 2 years after their wedding in the spring, the three of them were sitting on the porch. Thomas, now 14, was doing his math homework, complaining about the equations. Sarah was reading a medical book, researching new surgical techniques. Robert simply watched them, a quiet smile on his face. "Dad," Thomas said suddenly, dropping his pencil, "do you remember that day when I was little, when Sarah first appeared?" Robert looked at Sarah, and they exchanged a smile. "I remember, son. Why?" "I don't remember much from that time. The memories are hazy. But I do remember one thing. I remember you praying in my room, asking God to send someone to save me. And then she arrived." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. She stood up and hugged Thomas. "Do you remember this?" "Yes, and I think God heard. He sent you. You are my miracle." Robert joined the embrace, the three of them together, a family that had been destroyed by tragedy, but rebuilt by love, faith, and an impossible encounter on a muddy Texas road. They weren't perfect. They had difficult days, silly arguments, moments of tiredness and frustration like any family. But they had something that many spend their whole lives searching for. They had each other, and they had the deep certainty that love, when it's real, can overcome anything. Sometimes life puts people in our path in ways we never imagined. A simple gesture, done without expecting anything in return, can become the greatest gift someone has ever received. Robert helped a stranger in the rain, and that stranger brought back the son he thought he was going to lose. But more than that, she brought love, hope, and the certainty that we are never alone on this journey. If you are going through a difficult time right now, remember, the miracle you so desperately want may be right there, disguised as coincidence. Have faith. Keep doing good. And believe that better days will come. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, comment what you thought, and subscribe to the channel to keep hearing stories like this. Until next time.